You finish wet cleaning a historic geometric floor. It looks vibrant and completely restored. But as the water evaporates, a stark white powder bleeds out of the grout lines and across the tile surface. This is a familiar frustration for restoration technicians. A Victorian hallway floor cleans up beautifully while wet, only to dry completely dull, patchy, and structurally unstable a few hours later. Look closely at the surface. You'll often find dull traffic lanes down the center, loose tiles that click underfoot, completely missing edges along the perimeter, and those returning white mineral deposits. Faced with this, the standard contractor assumption is that the floor is simply choked with decades of ingrained dirt, wax, or failed sealers. The conventional response to stubborn dirt is aggressive force. Technicians will increase the chemical pH, reach for acid washes, or drop heavier abrasive rotary pads onto the clay. But Abbey Floor Care's 30 years of field protocols point to a different reality. These symptoms do not indicate a surface contamination problem. They are the visible signs of a structural breakdown within a moisture-active system. Historic fired clay tiles are highly chemically stable. However, they are physically vulnerable to the aggressive, uncontrolled extraction methods standard in modern commercial cleaning. Treating a Victorian floor like a modern high RPM commercial extraction job guarantees permanent physical and chemical damage to the fired clay. To understand why modern cleaning fails, we have to look past the visible tile surface and examine the hidden architecture underneath. These floors were built using dust-pressed imperial-sized tiles. Instead of modern adhesives, craftsmen tapped them directly into a semi-dry screed set over a lime or rubble base. Because of manufacturing variations in the 19th century, these tiles had slight dimensional inconsistencies. To make the complex patterns work, they were fitted with incredibly tight edge-to-edge joints, leaving almost no room for standard grout. Over a century of heavy foot traffic, that original lime bedding gradually loses its rigidity and structural support. This diagram illustrates what happens when you introduce a heavy 175 RPM rotary machine and excess water to that weakened system. The sheer weight and aggressive vibration of the machine immediately fracture the brittle, degraded lime screed below. As those voids form underneath, you get distinct localized symptoms. Tiles start to sound hollow when tapped, tight joints shift, and tile edges sit proud and uneven. If a tile already rocks or sounds hollow, hitting it with high-pressure water and mechanical weight instantly destroys whatever is left of that structural bedding plane. These floors were laid long before the invention of modern damp-proof membranes. They sit directly on top of moisture-active soil and rubble.
Because they are constantly exposed to ground moisture, the entire flooring system requires continuous vapor permeability. It has to breathe to survive. This makes steam cleaning or acid washing incredibly destructive. These methods force massive volumes of excess liquid straight down through the tight joints and into the bedding. Looking at this cross-section, you can see how that forced moisture pools in the permeable subfloor. Once there, it dissolves and activates dormant mineral salts hidden in the earth and rubble. As the room temperature rises and the floor begins to dry, evaporation creates capillary action, pulling this mineral-heavy water right back up through the porous screed and the clay tile body. The water vapor safely escapes into the air above, but the solid minerals tend not evaporate, leaving jagged white salt crystals behind on the tile face.
This recurring white deposit is called efflorescence. It is a direct physical indicator of ongoing moisture movement from the earth below, not leftover dust from a messy job. Contractors often try to hide these stains by applying non-breathable topical sealers or thick acrylic coatings over the damp floor. As vapor pressure builds directly beneath that airtight acrylic layer, the trapped moisture expands, causing the new coating to blister, peel, and inevitably fail. A surface bloom means subfloor moisture must be actively managed. The system has to remain breathable and can never be sealed in with heavy topcoats. Fixing this requires a strict mitigation protocol. Abbey Floor Care uses a clinical, low-moisture sequence designed to stabilize the floor without inflicting further damage. The first absolute rule of this sequence is that mapping and condition identification must happen before a single drop of liquid touches the tile. During the dry mapping phase, technicians chart the floor's topology. They systemically locate missing edges, pinpoint hollow tiles, and map perimeter damage that needs structural repair. Next comes dry extraction.
Technicians vacuum away loose, dry grit and abrasive debris from the tile surface without introducing any water that could push dirt deeper. They also isolate areas containing entrapped chemical residues, mapping out old carpet glue, paint splatters, and bitumen from previous floor coverings. You cannot use uncontrolled alkaline cleaners on these specific spots. Softening the residue chemically will just push the heavy stains deeper into the unglazed, highly porous clay. Only after mapping does the controlled, low-moisture cleaning phase begin. This requires soft brushes, non-scratch pads, and strictly monitored chemical dwell times to prevent absorption. Extraction is the absolute priority. A wet vacuum miraculously pulls moisture out of the vulnerable joints, leaving the surface immediately dry to stop capillary action. This exact clinical sequence ensures that structural subfloor stabilization is treated as a separate, critical process from basic cosmetic surface cleaning. The final finishing phase can only begin once the underlying substrate is entirely stable, structurally sound, and completely dry. Every individual tile must sit flush. The screed below must be steady and supportive, and all active moisture movement must be fully managed. True restoration is a task of structural remediation. Mechanical abrasion alone cannot fix a failing subfloor. Once stabilized, the surface demands specific protection. This diagram demonstrates how breathable impregnating sealers work. Instead of laying a suffocating plastic sheet over the clay, the sealer bonds internally, allowing moisture vapor to pass effortlessly through tile pores and evaporate safely. Technicians aggressively buff away any excess sealer during the application process, completely avoiding the buildup of a damaging topical film. Aesthetically, this revives the rich, deep colors of the original fired matte surface, explicitly avoiding the artificial plastic gloss of modern commercial finishes. This finish drastically simplifies long-term maintenance. Preserving it requires only dry sweeping and occasional pH-neutral mopping. Homeowners must avoid shortcuts like steam cleaners, which blast heat and water straight into the joints and inevitably restart the cycle of subfloor moisture damage. By diagnosing the substrate instead of fighting the surface, expert restoration leverages the subfloor's inherent chemistry to preserve the historic clay, giving the Victorian floor another full generation of life.